So I have to say, with episode 5 of the Zodiac War, I really enjoyed this episode, and I actually think it's one of my favorite episodes of the past 5 that we've seen so far. Now, the thing that I really like with this episode is focusing on a character like Sheep. I didn't think they were going to give him that amazing of a backstory. Like, I thought we'd see something interesting. Like, even though I wasn't a huge fan of Monkey's backstory, it was still good in its own way. But I wasn't really, like, anticipating Sheep's being that interesting. And it honestly proved me wrong. I thought Sheep's backstory was very good, and they also built onto his character quite well, and made him into something more than just a crazy old man with a lot of explosives, which I honestly appreciate. I thought his overall backstory of how, essentially, he actually won the Zodiac War before when he was in his youth, and I love how he literally just destroyed everyone in space by ejecting himself and blowing up the entire space station with them in it. I thought that was just the perfect way for someone like him to win the war. But then essentially his entire wish was to be able to see his grandson and basically have a family life, because all his life he was kind of fighting in wars. So I thought that was a good wish for himself. But I also like the reason why he went back into the war, because essentially his grandson would have to fight in this war if he didn't go himself. So essentially he takes up the reins again, thinking that he's probably going to die. He's an old man going into a young man's war, so it makes sense that he thinks that he probably won't live, but it doesn't mean he's not going to give it his all. So I think it's a good motive for him to rejoin the war, because really, there'd be no point for him going a second time, but having that kind of family drive, it gives him a very believable reason to go back in, but also, it makes him a character you kind of want to root for, even though you know he's probably going to get his head cut off or he's going to get blown up by his own dynamite. It does make him someone you want to root for, and he really has a very strategic mind. I really like how, when he was in those just individual shops, he was very much trying to figure out a plan of how he could team up with some of the weaker ones to basically make a team that he could manipulate and possibly win, because as long as he can take out the 3 big ones, which is Monkey, Rabbit, as well as Ox, then he does have a chance at winning. And I really like what they did with his character. It was very interesting. It wasn't anything we haven't seen or anything someone probably couldn't predict, but I thought it gave him a lot of personality and a lot of drive, and it made him someone that I'm now rooting for, even though I know he's going to get his head cut off or something to that nature. What I also thought was really interesting with this character is how he never ate the poison jewel. He actually slipped it into his beard, which I thought was interesting, and how he's trying to use that to his advantage, basically saying like, oh, I'm going to tell the opponents that I basically have the ability that I could take the gem out of someone without harming them, which is a really good plan in theory. Now granted, how is that going to work against someone, say like Tiger or someone like that? We'll only know as time goes on, but I thought it was very interesting what they ultimately did with this character, and I'm gonna root for the guy even though I know he's not gonna make it that far. Now something that's interesting, which definitely could be a translation issue, so if someone read the novel and they're trying to come in, type a comment saying, no Brandon, you're wrong, screw you, calm down. But I watched this on Crunchyroll, as I do, and essentially, in the very beginning, they essentially show us the guy who started this war, and you see a bunch of people who are trying to bet on this. Basically, it's a big gambling fest for them, but they don't start betting until half the opponents are left, and essentially they're trying to just talking about like, oh, this is a very predictable thing, but maybe we could predict on maybe the sheep or something like that. And I thought it was interesting because they say, once 3 more die, because there's only apparently 3 people that have died so far based on the translation that Crunchyroll did. And what's interesting about that is we know dog died, we know pigs died, and we know that chickens died. Those 3 we saw on screen. It gets confirmed that Horse ran away, which isn't surprising, but Snake has his head cut off, and he's supposedly being controlled by Rabbit. And something that I've been saying for a long time is I don't believe Snake is dead. I feel like he's kind of just manipulating Rabbit, or he's pretending that he's being controlled. And based on this episode, it's confirmed that he doesn't need his head to see. He can feel the vibrations in the ground, and that's how he can sense people. So I'm very curious that if his head can be separated from his body, and if his head could maybe control his body without being actually connected, and maybe that's part of the plan, that eventually he's going to meet up with his brother Dragon, and maybe that's when he's going to try to betray Rabbit or something like that. Now granted, this could be a mistranslation, and maybe there is 4 confirmed dead, and if that's true, then yes, Snake is 100% dead. However, I've been thinking this for a while. This is just my speculation. I could be wrong, and I'm fine with being proven wrong. But that's what I feel. I feel like Snake isn't dead. I feel like Snake's head being cut off from his body, maybe that's part of his ability, that he doesn't need his head to be attached for him to survive. But nonetheless, it definitely feels like in a couple of episodes, when it gets to their episode, the brothers' episodes, I definitely feel like we're going to see the betrayal on Rabbit, that he was never actually dead. His head being cut off doesn't actually kill him, and his body can function without it. And I think that's the twist we're going to see in a couple of episodes. Now granted, we'll have to wait and see, but I think that's very interesting. I think that translation that Crunchyroll did shouldn't go overlooked if you haven't read the novel. Now granted, if you've read the novel, you'll know if this was a mistranslation or if it was a proper translation. But when I heard that, I just thought to myself, okay, everything that I've been thinking with Snake might actually be coming true here, but granted, only time will tell. But this was a good episode. I really liked how it looked. I thought last week had a lot of kind of production issues. The art was a little sloppy here or there, and even the animation wasn't anything to really write home about. There was a decent amount of action, and I kind of liked how all the battle choreography was working, how it looked when it was in the more simplistic scenes. And I like Sheev, even though I know he's not going to make it that far. I really like his character, and I hope to see him at least for a little bit here. I think they're just essentially going to give us maybe 1 or 2 more backstories, and then essentially maybe they're going to kill a bunch of people all at once, maybe in a big explosion, something like that. But I definitely don't think, I still think it's following the Zodiac Order for the Great Race. I definitely don't see it going past that. And I just really like how they're really kind of throwing it in the viewer's face for someone who doesn't know about the Great Race, how they're like, there's only 3 possible winners. It's either going to be Monkey, it's either going to be Ox, or it's either going to be Rabbit. I love how they're really reinforcing that idea, which it's like, is another option there. But overall, I really liked this episode. I thought it was very fun, and I love what they did with the backstory. Very excited to see what they're going to do with Horse. It seems like Horse is going to get his backstory next week. So let's see where that takes us. Let me know your thoughts. And before you leave, smack that like button, share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.